Skid on that, and just gonna leave that up to the Lord. That was a good one. I won't mention her name. Anyway, you got me this morning. So it's 4:15. Won't keep you too long. I changed this 3 times, whether people were preaching about it, teaching about it. But I want to talk to you this morning about faith and patience. That's how we get our promise. We prayed about this morning. We talked about seeds. It's all in here. That's cool. These are actually, and I know that if you've been doing this a long time, you all know what this is, the power twins. You have one with the other. So I want to start off with prayer, if you don't mind. Thank you, Father, for the reading of your word. Your word has the ability to produce. I've seen it produce in my life. I've seen it produce in my family. I've seen it produce in the lives of people here. So I thank you, Lord, that you have a way that you can take this word and you can fashion it to fit every person's heart. If they'll open up their heart to receive it, don't look at the person, but look at the word and whisper, Spirit of God behind the word, and bring hope and bring encouragement today. That's my heart, that hope and encouragement will be opened up again in Jesus' name. So I want to start off with some scripture. Of course, the one that we all know and love, Romans 10:17. So how does faith come? By hearing, and hearing, and hearing, and hearing. When I read the word and my family kind of laughs at me, I sit and I read it out loud. Why? Because this is a gate. My gates are here in the word. Proverbs 23:18 says, For surely there's an end and an expectation, and it shall not be cut off. Hebrews 10:35, Cast not therefore your confidence away, which has great recompense of reward, for you have need of patience, that after you have done the will of God, you might receive the promise. So don't throw it away. When we're sure of ourselves, it's a sure thing. But you need to stick it out, staying with God's plan, so you'll be there for the promised completion. So if faith is the substance of things hoped for, and it's the evidence of things not seen, how do you get that picture? How do you get that picture in your mind? I was at BFF. I used to lead prayer up there, and Pastor Debbie said, she would call my sister, who was down here, starting the church, and she said, I think Karen has a gift of faith. And I didn't understand until I put this teaching together what she was talking about, because faith sees. It sees in the future. It's almost like, I know it's mine, you can't take it away. It's mine for the taking. So never lose sight of the promise, for it's for the taking. Faith takes it daily. Whatever the need is, financial, health, wealth, debt deliverance. I remember when I first got a hold of this, we didn't have a lot of things, and not that that should be our most important thing, but we were broke. We were living paycheck to paycheck. And I would take my checkbook and I would walk through the house. Actually, we were living in a trailer. God, that goes back many years. And I'd speak to that checkbook. I would talk to it. I was a fanatic. I would throw open my cupboards, my refrigerator, and not for me, but I wanted to have enough to even give. Because you can't give if you're broke. What are you going to give? So I would do that ever so daily. And when you have lack in your life, your mindset's got to change. After you've had that for years, and it's called a spirit of poverty. And I had it in my life. And I remember the first time somebody said that, it was a female, a Christian friend. Because iron sharpens iron. And they were looking out for my good, and they said, you're dealing with the spirit of lack, and God's trying to get things to you, but he can't because of this spirit. So I had to change the way I was thinking. So that's when I started this faith walk. I didn't confess my word over my situations. I think I taught on this one time. I don't know if y'all were here. I know some of you were. I know Linda was. I had a Bible promise book. When I started this thing called prayer, I saw power in people, and I said, I want to know how they can get results. I didn't want to be like them, but I wanted to know how they got the results. So I heard them talk in the Word, and I was like, well, how did they get all that Word in them? That's a big Bible. So I got a little Bible called the Bible Promise Book. And if you flip to it, that's a good tool to start for anybody in here who's never, thrust into this journey. And I used that over my children. I used it over my finances, many times over my health for my husband, and I've seen it work. Because you know what? He's not moved by my need. Honest to God, he's not. He's moved by my faith. And my faith is in the Word. That was a little
that's good.
Random place there. All right, so this is a testimony I've never given before. And I probably said I never would. But this was many, many years ago. I was in the second church the Lord ever brought me to. And I had this lump sum of money. And it was a pretty good piece of money. Several $1,000s. And I was in prayer. And I heard the Lord say, let me back up. I was believing God for a brand new house. And I was in prayer, and the Lord said, hey, you know that money you have? I said, yeah. He said, I want you to pay a widow's house off. I said, what? He said, I want you to pay a widow's house off, and I don't want you to let her know. And I was like, oh my God, how do you do that? How do you not? And then I took it, there's wisdom in a multitude of counsel. I took it to my pastor. At that time, it was Rhonda and Glenn Ewart. And I went to them. My kids are shaking their heads. They were there in the church with me. And I said, this does not make any sense. God, I've got enough money for a good down payment for a house. And God's telling me to sow this seed. Well, she threw her head back and she roared laughing. And she said, that's God. I said, it doesn't make sense. She said, that's why it's God. We got an upside down kingdom. So I said, all right, how are we going to do this? How can we do this and not let this widow know? I hope I don't cry here because this is so good. He said, take the seed through the church and channel it that way, and then they can write a check to Rosedale Federal, and then you can take the check to Rosedale, because she wasn't at Rosedale Federal. Do you know what a witness it was to that woman? Here's this Christian woman coming in and saying, I want to pay a house off for this widow, and I want you to call her when we get done this ordeal. And then when we get done, well, anyway, I'm jumping ahead. So I got the check from the church, channeled it that way, went to Rosedale Federal. You know, the scripture that says it's better to give than to receive. Oh my goodness, the joy that I had doing this. The joy. And it was a secret. Nobody knew. I didn't tell my family. I mean, they later found out, they're my family. And I can say it now because the widow's gone on to be with the Lord. So this is why I waited this long to tell this. But anyway, I went to Rosedale Federal, and I sat there, and the woman was, jaw dropped to the desk. She was just in awe. Who does these things? Well, I don't think she was born again Christian, but it was a witness. And then I had a time of sitting there talking to her about the Lord, but I said, can you please call this woman? I have her phone number. Can you call her? Tell her house is paid off. So they called her. And she hung up on him. She said, this is a sick joke. And hung up. I said, call her back. So she called her back. Can you see this woman doing this, guys?
Yes.
So she called her again, and she said, ma'am, this is Rosedale Federal. Please don't hang up the phone. I have good news for you. Your house has been paid off. And she hung up the phone again. So on the third time, I said, please call her again. And I'm just sitting there laughing. I'm just rolling. And she doesn't know. And I don't know that she ever knew. Maybe she did. But so she called her again. And the woman wept. And she said to this pastor lady, it was about a month later, she said she had laid on the floor all night that night before, that was a Monday, and asked the Lord to help her. She was going to lose her house because of her finances. Let me tell you something, y'all. I don't know if you've ever gotten to that place where you sowed a seed like that. That was my first. But what about dropping a $100 bill to a waitress when you go in and you have some food? I did that one time, and I snuck around the corner to watch. And here she went to the people. She went over to the people. She was believing God for shoes for her baby. There's a real world out there, and there's real people that are hurting. And you know where that came from? That came from a matter of just sitting in prayer. Sitting in prayer before the Lord and hearing from heaven to do something like that. And I guess this is why I never gave this testimony. But the Bible says, don't let your right hand know what your left is doing. You know, you don't want to put your stuff out there to get praise from men. That's not what it's about. But I did that to say this. You don't know what you're doing in obedience. All right. Ooh, that's a little rabbit trail there.
That's a good one. That's good.
All right. Turn with me to Luke. Luke 21. Excuse me. We can't cast away our confidence because that's how we please Him. We receive the promises in our lives, not our need, but by our faith. Luke 21, tell me when you're there.
Up there.
Oh, I got some people crying. I'm telling you, that was the best thing I've ever done in my life. I wish He'd give me that again. I swear I'd do it again. Oh, yeah. He told me, I don't know if that's down here, but he said, there's people out there who want to pay your houses off. I have it somewhere in my notes here. He said, there's people that want to pay your houses off out there. He says, but you've got to get the word out. Get that word out. And those things that you're believing for, and I don't want to jump ahead of myself, those houses and things like that you're believing for, hey, maybe He'll give you money to buy a house to give the house away. You know, He's a big God, and He thinks big. He doesn't think little like I do. Luke 21, don't brush this off. I'm not just saying this for some future generation, but for this one, these things will happen. What things? These things that we're believing for. We drive cars. I told my husband this yesterday. The newer ones, he calls them dummy lights. They have these little dummy lights that tells you when your tires are low or when your oil's low or if even your gas light's on. Oh my God, he hates when my gas light's on. I hate putting gas in my car. I do. I despise it. But it's just one of them things. But anyway, he works on our cars and we're blessed by that. So in the older years, he would have to keep an eye on our cars because they used oil. They had bald tires. Well, sometimes that's what happens to our cars. There's elements out there that make our vehicles dirty. And we have to take these in for tune-ups. Because, see, these are gates. These are things that God, it's been a long time, Lord. I waited 16 years for this church. What would have happened if Pastor Don and Pastor Tammy gave up on this?
That's right.
What would have happened? We wouldn't be here. My husband has done, as I said, has done this for our family, and we're very grateful that he's maintained our vehicles as long as he has. But we have to maintain our vehicles. And if you do, they'll last you a long time. And he said that forever. He doesn't like to lend out his stuff because his stuff's old. But you know why? He takes care of it. And the kids will laugh and they're like, Dad, it's old. You need to replace it. And they're laughing now. But you know what? It is old, but it works. And why? Because he takes care of it. Well, we got to take care of these vehicles. Jude 1:20 says, but you, dear friends, carefully, how do we take care of them? That was the question. And here it is, Jude 1:20. But you, dear friends, carefully build yourself up in this most holy faith by praying in the Holy Ghost. Our minds are unfruitful, but it can produce. It can produce strongholds. And then if we look at Philippians 4:8, summing it all up, friends, I say to you all, do best by filling your minds and meditating on things true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious. I like this. This is the Message Bible. The best, not the worst. The beautiful, not the ugly. Things to praise, not things to curse. These things help in building your faith. I asked my daughter if I could share this testimony. She is like me. She doesn't like to stand in front of people. And she said, yes, I could. She was working a job, and this is faith. This goes along the lines of faith. She was working a job in Cumberland, and she just knew that God had bigger and better things for her. And God gave her a prophetic word. God will give you prophetic words when He speaks to your heart about something. He'll like breathe on it. He breathes on it so it'll keep it alive and fresh. And so He breathed on this with her, and He told her a couple things about it. He said one of the things was a red door. And that was just a focal point, something that she could look for in the promise. And she had went, at this time she was doing criminal law, and she had went for an interview down in Powhatan. And they said, you have the job. We want you to go tell the Commonwealth Attorney that you're going to work in Powhatan. That was a Friday. She was excited. Oh, she was so excited. And she told me about it, of course, and she had a reservation. She had what we call a check in her spirit. So she didn't go to work and tell them, this was Monday morning, fast forwarding. She didn't go to work and say, I'm going to give my 2-week notice. I have another job. She kind of sat on it. About lunchtime, I think it was, wasn't it? You called. They had given the position to somebody else that wasn't even qualified. That hurt her. And she's like, what in the world? They told, what if I would have told them that I was given my 2-week notice? I would be without a job. But what did the Lord do? He gave her some things to hold on to. So, fast forwarding, she now has a job as, how do I say this, the Chief Master Deputy Clerk in Powhatan, and that there's a red door. Not only her mama gave her this word, but Joan Huth about the red door. And that's what I kept telling her, the red door, the red door. And her house had a red door. She's now a homeowner, about 5 years? 3. Her house has a red door. So these are things that were afar off, things that, very natural things, I know, but they were things she was believing God for. So I gave that testimony for you. You're welcome. No, he's towards the end. So Hebrews 10:35 through 36 says, don't throw it all away now. Again, this is the Message Bible. You were sure of yourselves then, and you're still a sure thing. But you need to stick it out, staying with God's plan, so there'll be the promise of the completion. So I heard it once said, I think my sister said this, and probably Pastor Doug too, that if you make up your mind to stand for eternity or forever, you're not going to have to stand too long. When we go through tests and trials, it's a really good way to find out where we are. You'll find your strengths and you'll find your weaknesses. And you know that the test was never put in place to cause you to fail. So here comes Kim into my sermon. Kim's a teacher. Kim recognizes that I have an issue in English. And she said, I want to give you some extra credit work. I don't want you to fail this year. That's what a good teacher does. They recognize your weakness, so they start to help you. And see, that's what these tests and trials do for us. Come on, guys, this is good. It puts you in a place where you see where you're weak so you can build your faith. Pastor Don asked me to stay along this line of faith, and you know me, I want to go prophetic. I didn't want to go with faith. But there's a reason. Something must be down the road that we need this. But as Kim recognizes this student's struggling, and she knows SATs are coming, she's coming to the end of her school year, she's fighting for this kid that's been fighting all year long. And this kid's really putting forth the effort. I know some of us don't. Some of us got by the skin of our teeth. We won't mention any names. But some of us, I was one of them. You know, I was interested in other things. But the end of the year's coming to a close. She wants to see these kids pass. So she's putting tests and trials out there. They're locators. Turn to Abraham in Genesis 22. They want to pass you. These tests are there to pass you. What grade do you teach, Kim? Kindergarten. So she wants to pass these kids, and she has the ability to say to her parents, you should keep this child back a year because this is going to help them when they're stomping their feet and they're wanting to go on to grade 1. Isn't that how we do? This is what I want. I want it now. That microwave mentality. Well, a good teacher says, I think if I hold them back, it's going to help them. Yeah, Genesis 22.
Yes.
After all this, God tested Abraham. We're starting at verse 1. God said, Abraham? Yes, answered Abraham, I'm listening. He said, take your dear son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I'll point out to you. Abraham got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young servants and his son Isaac. He split the wood for the burnt offering, and he set out for the place that God had directed him to. On the 3rd day, he looked up and he saw the place in a distance. Abraham took 2 of his servants, stay here with the donkey, and the boy and I are going over there to worship, and we'll come back to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and gave it to Isaac. He even had to carry the wood. He carried the flint and the knife, and the 2 of them went off together. Isaac said to Abraham, his father, Father? Yes, my son. We have flint and wood, but where's the sheep? Where's the burnt offering? Abraham said, Son, God will see to it that there's sheep for the burnt offering. And they kept on walking together. They arrived at the place to which God had directed them. Abraham built an altar. He laid out the wood. Then he tied up Isaac, and he laid him on the wood. Wow. Wow, man, I don't know if I could have done that. I'm just being real. Abraham reached out, took his knife to kill his son. Just then, an angel of God called out to him from heaven, Abraham! Abraham! Yes, I'm listening. Don't lay a hand on that boy. Don't touch him. Now I know, fearlessly, you fear God. You didn't hesitate to place your son, your dear son, on an altar. Abraham looked up. He saw a ram caught by its horn in the thicket. Abraham took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of the son. And Abraham named the place God, Yireh. God sees to it. That's where we get the saying, on the mountain of God, he sees to it. And the angel of the Lord spoke from heaven a second time to Abraham. I swear, God's sure word, because you have gone through this and not refused to give me your son, your dear son, I will bless you. Oh, how I'll bless you. And I'll make you and that your children flourish like stars in the sky, like sand on the beaches, and your descendants will defeat their enemies. That wasn't just for Abraham. That was for us.
Yes.
And there is scripture that says that if you be Abraham's seed, your heirs,
Yes.
according to the promise.
Yes.
From here we can see that because of one man's faith and patience, we can possess the enemy's gates, we can be blessed because we're his descendants, and all the nations of the earth can be blessed. It was through his obedience that there was a ripple effect. It's not just about what he believed, it's about what he did. Faith does. I believe he had to keep his eyes on the Lord during this time, don't you?
Yeah.
That's his boy. I only have one boy. That was his promised boy yet, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, this was a fight for him, I think. We had the Bible. He didn't have that back then. We have a more sure word. He didn't have that. He had God. But he had to fight, I think, against opposition. And I think that's the fight that God calls us to fight. You know, that's the only fight we're called to fight, is the fight of faith. Pastor Don says that all the time, so that shouldn't be just a cliche in here. Hebrews 6:12 through 15 says, don't drag your feet. Be like those that stayed on course with the committed faith and they get everything that's promised to them. When God made his promise to Abraham, he backed it to the hilt, putting his own reputation on the line. He said, I promise that I'll bless you with everything I have. Bless, bless, and bless. Abraham stuck it out and got everything that he had promised to him. 1 Timothy 6 says, but you, Timothy, man of God, run for your life from all this. Pursue a righteous life, a life of wonder, faith, love, steadiness, courtesy. Run hard and run fast in faith. Seize the eternal life, the life that you were called to, the life you so fervently embraced in the presence of many witnesses. I'm charging you before the life-giving God and before Christ, whom he took his stand before Pontius Pilate, and he didn't give him 1 inch. Keep this commandment to the letter and don't slack off, our master. Jesus is on his way. And then I've asked my son to come up here and give a testimony. He's like, oh. This is something that just recently happened for him and his wife. Come on up, Chris. God spoke to him. I'll let him share, but God spoke to him to do something. And because of his obedience, I'll let him share what happened.
Back in November, I tried to buy a house, and they told me I couldn't buy one, and I actually had good credit. And the following week, I came to church. God told me to start giving a certain amount to the church for the building, not for my tithe, for the building.
Right.
And I did. I've been obedient. He said, every time you get paid, do it. And I was like, okay. And this was back in November. In January, I reapplied, got approved, moved in a house in March. And if y'all know me, I'm like a Jew, man. I don't like giving my money out. And
He's learning.
oh yeah. I'll bless you with anything I've got, but when it comes to money, that's one thing I don't do.
True.
And it's been a big step. And I went from a part-time position to a full-time manager within these 3 months.
Wow.
To when Joan was here, she prophesied about job,
Right.
if y'all were here.
Yeah.
That week, I got a phone call from one of my old employers, who wanted me to come back and with a substantial raise. And yeah, it's just been blessing after blessing since I just been honoring God, and it's just a step of faith, how it led into Mom's preaching. and she asked me to come up and say that, all that. But,
That's good.
He doesn't like to get in front of people either. Not just you and the family, but you know what? You don't let that stop you, because I'm not going to get to heaven and God say to me, why didn't you do what I told you to do? Because I was afraid, or I was timid, and I shrunk back. I'm not going to be that. I know my kids used to say that. Anybody that's a parent in here, or going to be a parent in here, they would fight you, teenagers, about going to church. They were tired. They stayed up late. Why do we have to go to church every Sunday? Well, I'm not going to stand before God and hear the Lord say, why didn't you take your kids to church?
Right.
And I did, but I had opposition from family members that weren't serving the Lord, not my husband. It was extended family members, but that just goes to show you what faith will do. That was above the tide. That was something, you gotta give God something to work with.
That's right.
Is that
That's true.
truth?
That's true.
Hebrews 11:13 through 14. I love this. It said, each one of these people died in faith, not having in hand what was promised, but they still believed. How did they do it? They saw it from a distance. They waved their greeting at it. I see you. You're mine. They were confident. They weren't cocky. See, confidence, sometimes people can look at and say, that's cockiness. It's not. When you get a hold of this word, and you know it's something that God's promised you, whether it be healing, you got to get in there. You got to work. Just like when you want big muscles. Guess what? I can't sit on the couch and watch TV and eat popcorn. If I want big muscles, I got to get off that couch. I got to go to the gym, and I got to work these muscles. But they saw that promise from afar off. They were waving at it. And they accepted the fact that they were transient in this world. People who live this way make it plain that they're looking for their true home. It's not about the houses. It's not about what we possess. I came here to make a mark that ain't going to be erased. And just like Abraham did, and it had a ripple effect. The things that you do in your lives, they have a ripple effect for your family members. Maybe you're trusting and you're believing God for family members that haven't come in yet. Or you're believing God for that home. Get before Him. I didn't know all these things that He was asking me to do when I think I gave that testimony once about when I was in VFF. The Lord said, I want you to give X amount of dollars above your tithe. And I said, okay, I'll do that. It's with tithes and offerings in Malachi. I said, I'll do that. He said, you build my house, I'll build yours. Well, my mind said he's going to build this. This is a house. That's where I went. He's just going to build me up. He's going to straighten things out. He's going to set some stuff in order. That's what my thoughts were. And then we moved to Virginia, and I found my house. And then a year later, it was a new house, and it was built by a Christian. Christian man built it. Because when we walked in, Buddy's like, I can't believe you couldn't have found a place further out. And I said, well, you're a motorhead. You like cars. We have to go way out because, I don't know, we have 15 cars at any given time in our house. He shuffles them around to keep them nice and neat, but they're not all ours. They're our kids too and our grandkids. But anyway, he built my house. And used a Christian man to do it while I was helping pay off a building fund at VFF. Didn't know till a year later I was sitting in front of the fireplace, just sitting before the Lord and worshiping Him. He said, how do you like your house? I said, what do you mean? I love my house. And he said, I built this just for you. Put the floor in you want. And then, these are things that only God knows. Close your eyes, I got a word for you. It's called the forgotten seed. I hear a word about the forgotten seed, one sown in obedience for a lifetime of need. It was the one, or was, many sown oh so long ago. It's the one that's forgotten that I called you to sow. For some it was a word I spoke deep in your heart. You never let it go or wouldn't let it part. It was the vision that I gave you for your life. It was for times like these when it was hard for you to fight. For some it was called ministry and preparation needed to take place. As I've not called you to retreat, but to put smiles today back on your face. For others, it was a promise of things yet to come. So get out your word, for it's those I have heard to bring to these to fruition. This place that you stand in was once a word held onto so tight. They stood against the odds. When things became hard, they girded up their loins and they fought the good fight. There are family members some long to see. There's a promise about that in my word. It's free. You see, it's time. It's in my time. It's about the long haul. For others, it's been a smother. Shake it off and get back on your wall. It's through patience and faith you'll see my hand move as I bring forth more here, for the promise is clear. It's about the lost and the cost of the dear. So you say in your heart, how and when can these things be? It's by taking your place, here in this place, family worship, family. Eternity will tell the things done in my name. Write the vision again, make it plain, and read it out loud. For your gates need to open so they can receive. There's coming a boldness on some that was not there before, as they cry out for more while knees hit the floor. As they shoulder the burden of the Lord, what is the burden I talk about today? It's for the asking. Don't be left out. There's coming a shout, just like it did when this place came about. Pray for your pastors as they have a heart after mine. They tend the sheep well. You will see, time will tell. And they're away because I've pulled them away to show them a higher place. I love this place. My spirit is free here. Some things are right, some things just seem a little too tight. But for that, I would bring a new release today as I begin to push some sorrows away. Some have waited a long time. I know the stand has been long, but there's a new strength that I say to you, stand strong. For it's the goodness of the Lord that what you said it will be, as I've set aside desolates to bring into this family, and will bring more. I call you to remember the forgotten seed. It's been dormant for a while. Remember, it will be. It'll make you smile. It'll bring you out mysteries of hidden treasures for theirs who dare to go further. There's a joy for your journey, a new light for your path. Be encouraged today. I make a new way for the forgotten seed to come to pass. How many seeds are out there laying dormant that we sowed so many years ago? I remember that time when I had that money and I ran out of things to ask for. You ever do that? You ever go to the offering plate with a seed and forget about things? I started naming some crazy things. Things that weren't even, grandbabies that weren't even here yet. You know, I'm naming these for my grandbabies, I'm naming these for their spouses, and they're seeds. They're forgotten seeds. They're seeds that are laying out there. And I know that the Spirit of God just wants to blow on those. He wants to cause them to come to life again. He wants you to dream again. He wants your heart to wake up and dream again. The dreams that you used to dream before. And hey, I went a little long this morning, so with that, I'm here if you need prayer for anything, but I hope this blessed you. The Lord is just talking about faith. He's trying to build our faith for something down the road. And if we